We have 13 days to go. So it's interesting and it's important that we look at the campaign trail and what the political leaders are saying. So you may want to make a date with us on that. Let's move on now. On the maize scandal that rocked the Grand Coalition government in 2008 resurfaced as a matter of public interest during yesterday's presidential debate, with NASA presidential candidate Raila Odinga denying any involvement in the scam. The former Prime Minister claimed Deputy President William Ruto, who was the Agriculture Minister at the time, and the then Minister for Special Programs in the Grand Coalition government, Dr. Naomi Shaban, wanted the government to smuggle maize from Tanzania after stock from the Strategic Grain Reserve was depleted. A plan, he says, he opposed. Patrick Amemo has the details.
When Kenya faced food shortage in 2008, Raila Odinga, who was the Prime Minister in the Grand Coalition government, engaged then Agriculture Minister William Ruto in accusations and counter-accusations over meddling in the importation of subsidized maize.
Two of my officers, my Chief of Staff and my Permanent Secretary, I immediately asked them to step aside so that the investigations could be carried out. I also suspended the Minister in charge of Agriculture, who had been giving his friends letters to go and take maize from the National Cereals Board, the current Deputy President. But that decision was countermanded by the President.
Raila said at the presidential debate that in a meeting held at the Prime Minister's office on 30th July 2008 and attended by the Ministers for Finance, Agriculture and Special Programs, the parties differed on where the maize should be sourced. Raila says he was opposed to the idea of smuggling maize from neighboring Tanzania to address Kenya's food shortage.
From our sources, this meeting was split because you preferred yourself getting maize from South Africa. Naomi Shaban and William Ruto, on the other hand, preferred to get it from Tanzania.
At that time, we were looking for maize which was GM-free. And it happened out that at that time, it was only in South Africa. Tanzania had actually banned maize importation because they themselves had a shortage of maize. Madam Naomi Shaban was talking about us getting maize through panya routes from Tanzania into Kenya. And we told her we cannot allow, as a government, to import maize illegally from our neighbor.
Raila denied accusations of personal involvement in the maize scandal.
None of you really meant well. Both yourself on one side, William Ruto and Naomi Shaban on the other side, your interest was to get selected importers to do this for purposes of profiteering.
We didn't even know the companies which were going to export this maize. That the tendering was done by the NCPB. Everything was done under the Ministry of Special Programs and Ministry of Agriculture. Us was just to sit down, and this was brought for us, and to decide that this is what is workable, this is what is working in terms of our interests as a country. This is where we are going to get value for our money as a government. So we were not involved. Office of the Prime Minister does not procure. The Prime Minister just coordinates the functions of the government.
PricewaterhouseCoopers wanted investigations narrowed down to then Agriculture PS Romano Kiome and National Cereals and Produce Board Managing Director Gideon Misoi. The audit report described Misoi as the single most culpable individual in the maize saga. The report identified oversell of strategic grain reserve in excess of 277,000 bags and the allocation of subsidized maize to well-connected brokers who sold the stock to millers at exorbitant profits. This caused the price of maize flour to shoot up beyond the reach of the poor. PS Mohamed Isahakia was accused of allocating 10,090 kilogram bags of maize to Interglobal, a software company in which he is a co-director, which later sold its allocations to Eldoret Grains. In his defense, Isahakia claimed to have had no knowledge of the transaction. The audit report says Fafi MP Barry Shiel, who was a co-director at Interglobal and NCPB board member, confirmed he closed the deal with the miller. The audit report accused Karoli Omondi of an apparent breach of procurement regulations in relation to his initialing a contract with African Farm outside of formal process. Raila says he directed Karoli to sign a letter instructing NCPB to immediately import maize from South Africa following cabinet approval to pay an additional cost of $14 million before the price shot up.
That cabinet approval was eventually shown to Pricewaterhouse. Mr. Karoli Mundi was cleared. The same thing with my permanent secretary.
Kenya's first maize scandal unfolded between 1964 to 1965 when the Minister for Cooperatives and Marketing, the late Paul Ngei, was accused of meddling in the Maize Marketing Board, the predecessor of the National Cereals and Produce Board. A 1966 report by a commission appointed to look into the shortages accused Ngei of smuggling maize and overseeing the export of surplus maize. This forced the country to rely on yellow maize imports from the United States of America. Patrick Amimo, KTN News.